Hi guys, it's Just Honest Fiction and welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to be sharing my top 20 romances of 2022. Hey guys, so for those of you who don't know, Goodreads is a website where you're able to post ratings and reviews of the books that you read over the course of a year. And every year they have the Goodreads Choice Awards. So I was looking at the romance nominees and I realized that I did not recognize half of the titles. So I think this has a lot to do with the fact that I mostly read indie published romance books and Goodreads tends to nominate traditionally published romance books that were released this year. So, Jess from Peace Love Books reached out to me and a bunch of other romance booktubers and asked us to post what we feel were the best romance books that were released this year. So that is this video. I am so excited to talk about these books with you guys. Now, if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Thursday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram and Goodreads, both linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about my favorite books that were released this year. Alright guys, so these books are in no particular order, but I am going to start off with the books that are already nominated in the Goodreads Choice Awards for Romance category. So first up we have Every Summer After by Carley Fortune. I 100% believe this book should be on that list. I love this book. This is following Percy and Sam. Percy and Sam end up meeting when their parents get lake houses right next to each other, and we follow them over the course of 6 years as they slowly go from being friends to lovers, and they just have this beautiful relationship. And then something happens that completely fractures it, and they stop talking for years until a tragic event occurs and they're forced to reconnect. And this book was so good. If you enjoyed Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren, I think that you would definitely enjoy this. Very similar vibes. Personally, I like this one a little bit better, but was definitely one of my top reads of the year. And next up we have Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. So this is following Knox and Naomi. In the beginning of the story, Naomi is about to get married until she receives a call from her estranged troublemaker of a sister saying, "I need your help." So Naomi ends up leaving her wedding, still in her wedding dress, trying to find her sister. And when she gets to this town, she finds out that her sister has, one, happens to have a daughter, and two, has abandoned her. So now Naomi is in this town where she knows no one. She just found out that she's an aunt and has to take care of her niece. So luckily, she ends up meeting Knox. And Knox is this bearded, tattooed, bad guy loner who wants nothing to do with this situation, but also just can't help but help, seeing that Naomi is just completely struggling and now her entire world has imploded around her. So it is their relationship and it is glorious. I love this. I listened to this entire book in one sitting without realizing how chunky it was. It was just such a good time. I think the pacing was perfect. There's the perfect blend of emotion and comedy, and it just completely worked. So I definitely think this book deserves a spot in the top romances of 2022. All right, guys, so 2 Coho books were nominated for Best Romance of the Year. And personally, I think only one of them should have been, and this is probably a very controversial pick, but I absolutely loved Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I loved this book. So this is following Kenna, and after something terrible happens, she makes a horrible mistake. She's sentenced to prison for 5 years. Unfortunately, she realizes she is pregnant, so she has to give up custody of her daughter to her deceased boyfriend's parents. Now, she ends up spending the 5 years in prison, but when she's released, she really just wants to connect with her daughter, and the people that are currently raising her daughter aren't allowing her to do that. So she moves to the town she knows her daughter is being raised in, and the first night she gets there, she ends up having a one-night stand with this very attractive guy. Only to later discover this guy actually has, one, a relationship with her daughter, and also a relationship with the people that are raising her. So it is all of their story, and it's really just everyone wanting to do the best by Kenna's daughter, and you really understand the motivations of everyone, even if you don't agree with what they are doing. They all just want the best for this little girl, but it's just messy, and I really, really enjoyed this. So highly, highly recommend. If you have not read this, check it out. The other book that was nominated for Coho is It Starts With Us, and while I did absolutely 100% love It Ends With Us, it's my favorite Coho book ever, It Starts With Us, I just feel like wasn't enough of a story. I think that it's probably on this list because it does feature characters that were in the first book that we absolutely love, but the overall story I just didn't think was that good. It felt a little bit like an extended epilogue to me, so that is why I don't believe it should be on the Goodreads list, but reading subjective. Anyway, definitely check out Reminders of Him if you haven't yet. This next book is interesting because it was actually a letdown for me, but I do think it deserves a spot on the Goodreads Choice Awards, and it does have one. And that is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. So this is my least favorite Emily Henry book, but I think I still rated it 3.5 or 4 stars just because I love Emily Henry's writing and I think she tells a really good story. So this is following Nora, who's this cutthroat literary agent. She's all work all the time, and her sister Libby wants to go on vacation to this very small, middle of nowhere town. So Nora ends up agreeing. They go there, and when they get there, Nora discovers that Charlie, an editor that she does not get along with, is also currently in this town. So it is their story. They end up doing, I think they end up doing like a dare where they each have to do something the other one has picked. If I'm remembering correctly, it's been a while since I read this, but I just remember this book reminding me so much of Gilmore Girls in terms of dialogue. I hate Gilmore Girls. It is one of my least favorite shows. I don't know why. I know everyone loves it. But that is why I think that this does deserve a spot on the Goodreads Choice Awards. A lot of people absolutely love this book. So even though personally it wasn't for me, I understand why it's on there. And next up we have Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. So I was not surprised at all that this was on the Goodreads Choice Awards. This is the same author that wrote The Love Hypothesis. It's in the same series. And this book reminded me a lot of like The Love Hypothesis 2.0. There's a lot of similarities, but I did really enjoy it. So we're following Bree, and she is this very quirky girl. She has a bunch of piercings, crazy colored hair, and she works in STEM, and she ends up being assigned to work on this project for NASA. Unfortunately, her nemesis in college, Levi, is going to be co-leading. So right when she gets there, she's a little hostile towards Levi, and she slowly starts to realize that he might not actually be her nemesis. There just might have been a little miscommunication going on. But then they have to deal with the fact that some things are going missing on their project, and it almost seems like their project is being sabotaged. So I did enjoy this book a lot. I just don't think it was quite as unique as I wanted it to be from The Love Hypothesis. That being said, I think it 100% deserves a spot on the Goodreads Choice Awards. All right, and last up is a bit of like an honorable mention. So Twisted Hate by Anna Huang is nominated, and I've only ever read Twisted Love, and I didn't really love it. I think I rated it like 3.5 stars. However, everybody I have spoken to has said that Twisted Love is probably the weakest in the series. So I do want to continue with the series and see what I think. But that is why it's not on my list per se. I'm not saying anything against it. I've just never read it, but I have heard very, very good things about the series overall. All right, so moving on to the romance books I feel should have been nominated. This first book I just finished before I sat down to film this video, and I think it's gonna be in my top 3 books, if not my favorite book of the year. It's Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. So this book is just so emotionally impactful. Definitely check trigger warnings before starting it. There are some very upsetting subjects in this book. This is following Yasmin and Josiah, and in the beginning of the book, we see them just young and in love. Josiah ends up proposing to Yasmin, and we just see how much these two people love each other and never think they're going to be separated. And then we fast forward in the next chapter, they're currently divorced with 2 children that they're trying to co-parent. And we see through glimpses what happened to cause this fracture in their relationship. So this is a second chance romance, and oh my gosh, the gut punch of a lot of moments in this book. This author just did an amazing job of really showing what it's like to be separated from that person that you love and like seeing them with someone else. And it was so emotional, and I absolutely loved it. Like I said, one of my favorite books of the year. I can't believe it's not on the Goodreads Choice Awards because I know a lot of people are reading it and loving it. I don't know if it was released too late to be part of the nominees, but if you have not read that book, definitely read it. It was so good. And next up, we have Blindside by Kandi Stiener. So I actually vlogged reading this in a New to Me author vlog. So I'll leave that vlog linked in the cards and in the description. But this is following Clay and Gianna. So Clay is a college football player, and the beginning of the story, his girlfriend breaks up with him out of the blue. So he is just heartbroken. So he ends up coming up with this idea with Gianna, who is the public relations manager for the football team, to fake date each other because Gianna has a crush on this musician Clay is super popular, so he thinks that if they are fake dating, the musician will want Gianna and his ex-girlfriend will get jealous and want him back. Obviously, these two end up catching feelings for each other, and that is the story, and I loved it. So this was a little bit more emotional than I thought. Clay is dealing with a lot at home. Gianna is also really shy and comes from a family of people that are just very proficient in what they do. So she just kind of feels like the black sheep of the family. And it was just a really fun story, and I really enjoyed it. I do want to go back and read Fair Catch, which is the first book in this series. I kind of started with book 2 by accident, but this was so much fun and definitely worth all of the hype. All right, so this next book was another one of my top books of the year, and that is The Words by Jade. So I was very surprised that this wasn't nominated. I feel like everyone is loving this book this year, and this is following Phoenix. So at the beginning of the story, Phoenix's mother leaves him, and he is being raised by his very abusive father. So once he gets into high school, he's a little bit of a loner, but he's also like super popular, kind of like the bad boy type, and he is struggling in school. So one of his teachers asks Lennon, who's this very shy girl, her father's a music composer, she is being bullied relentlessly at school because of her weight, and she ends up being Phoenix's tutor. And she realizes right away that Phoenix actually has dyslexia. So she teaches him ways to like cope with this, and they just have this super strong bond, and they become very good friends until Phoenix does something and completely betrays Lennon. So then years go by, and Lennon ends up seeing Phoenix again and has to interact with him. This is a second chance romance, rock star romance, and it was so good. I will leave my review where I talked about this book in the cards in the description because I love this book so much. One of my favorite. I love the dyslexia representation. It was just an amazing read, especially if you enjoy rock star romances. Definitely check this out. And next up we have Meet Me Halfway, and this is by Lilian T. James. So this is a single parent romance, and it is one of my favorites. We are following Madison, and she had her son at a very young age. And although her parents are willing to help, she really wants to raise her son independently and just give him the best life possible. So she is working 3 jobs on top of going to school and is just trying to get by in life. The parents at the school where her son goes really judge her for having her child so young. So that is a hostile environment. She's also dealing with essay at work, and she is just stressed out. So when her broody neighbor leaves a note on her door, she has absolutely no interest. And when she confronts him, some interest sparks, and it's their relationship. And I love this book. I really think it showcases the struggles of being a single mother. I read a bunch of other single parent romances after finishing this just because this book was so good. So highly recommend, and I just can't believe this didn't make the nominee list. And next up we have another single parent romance, and that is Juniper Hill by Devney. This is the second book in the Eden series, and it's personally my absolute favorite. We are following Memphis, and she has just driven across country with an infant to work at the Eloise Inn. So she's been talking to Eloise for a while about this position. She's going to be the new cleaning lady. Unfortunately, Eloise did not talk to her brother Knox about this. So when Memphis shows up on Knox's door wanting to rent the apartment that I think is like attached to his apartment, or it's like the upstairs, he has no idea what she's talking about. So it is kind of, it's not really enemies to lovers, but Knox is this like brooding tattooed chef who wants nothing to do with Memphis and especially her child. We find out the history of Knox and why he's so against it. And then there is a little bit of romantic suspense at the end. There is like, I don't want to give too much away, but there's some suspenseful moments towards the end. But I loved Knox and Memphis relationships. I especially just love Knox, tattooed, brooding chef. I mean, it can't get better, and he's amazing with children. So I really enjoyed this book. I also really enjoyed Garnet Flats, which is the third book in this series, which is also a second chance romance. Both books were absolutely divine and definitely deserve to be on the Goodreads Choice Awards. And next up we have A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime. This book was so much fun. It was just rich people drama, and I loved it. So we are following Crew and Ren. Crew is this super rich boy. His parents actually own the prep school all the students are going to, and he's just really popular and gets around with the ladies. Then you have Ren, and Ren is just the good girl. She wears a purity ring, and she tries not to judge her friends for sleeping around, but yet she kind of does. And she's just the quintessential like teacher's pet, goody two-shoes type character, but like not in an annoying way. So anyway, Ren and Crew end up being paired together to work on this project where they have to kind of get to know each other. And then it is their relationship, and it was so good. I will never look at blow pops the same way, I will say that. but I really enjoyed this. I think if you're a fan of Gossip Girl, you'll definitely enjoy A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime. Next up is one of my favorite age gap romances. We have The Confidence of Wildflowers by Micalea Smeltzer. So this is following Thayer and Salem. At the beginning of the story, we see Salem. She is about to graduate high school. She's had the same boyfriend for a while. She's working in her mother's shop, and she just doesn't know what she's gonna do with her life after she graduates. Then Thayer moves in next door. He is this very attractive single dad construction worker, and Salem offers to babysit his son, and eventually a relationship soon blossoms between them. So I love this book so much. However, I know it's not going to be for everyone, so definitely check trigger warnings. There is cheating in this book, so if you don't like to read about cheating, I don't recommend picking this up. There's also a very traumatic event that happens towards the end of this book that many people probably wouldn't want to read. So just know going in, check trigger warnings, but I loved Thayer and Salem together. Thayer was just so sweet towards Salem, and it was so good. Like I said, one of my favorite age gap romances, and I highly recommend. And next up, we have Praise by Sara Cate. This is the first book in the Salacious Players Club, and I actually had to double check that this was released this year. I feel like all of the books in the Salacious Players Club have been given like really positive reviews and are very loved by a lot of people in the romance booktube community. So I was very surprised none of the books made the list or made the nominee list. But Praise in particular is following Emerson. In the beginning of the story, Emerson and his friends end up starting up this club for people with certain sex kinks where they can go to this club and not be judged. So this club becomes very popular, it's very lucrative. Unfortunately, Emerson's son discovers that his father started this and they become estranged because the son's embarrassed. So Emerson's son's ex-girlfriend is named Charlie, and when Charlie goes to Emerson's business in order to get a check for the rent that is owed, Emerson mistakes Charlie for his new submissive. Luckily, Charlie's really into it, and it's their relationship, so it's ex-boyfriend's dad, age gap romance, and it was so good. It was like the right amount of spice and plot, and I just loved Emerson and Charlie together. It was great. I loved it. So highly recommend. I still have to read Give Me More and Mercy, and then I think I finished with the series, but overall, I love this series, and it is worth all of the hype. And next up we have Ivy by Willa Nash. So when I read this, I didn't realize that Willa Nash is actually Devney Perry's pen name. So I ended up reading a lot of Devney Perry this year. But this was so much fun. I know I keep saying that about all of the books, but this is taking place at this very prestigious and wealthy college. So we are following 3 different roommates, and they are very rich. They are all harboring secrets, and it's following their relationships. So you have age gap, you have enemies to lovers, and it's just angsty. And if you like the feel of like Magnolia Parks or Gossip Girl, I think you'll really enjoy this book. So highly, highly recommend. All right, and next up I have 2 books from the same series. So first up we have Mafia Darling, which is the second book after Mafia Mistress. I loved Mafia Mistress. It's the first book in the Kings of Italy series. It is following Fausto and Francesca. So the second book I feel like was a really good conclusion to Fausto and Francesca's relationship, although Fausto did lose a little bit of his edge. And then I read Mafia, Madman, and I became completely obsessed with Enzo and Gia. So this is the third book in the Kings of Italy series. Oh my goodness, it's probably my new favorite captor-captive relationship. We are following Gia and Enzo. Gia is this model. She ends up being kidnapped by Enzo because Enzo wants revenge on Fausto. And Gia is Francesca's sister. So he thinks kidnapping her is going to help figure out a way to like get his revenge. But then he realizes that Gia has a lot of personality and she does not make a very good captive. And it's their relationship, and I just love how strong and spunky Gia is the entire time. And I didn't think I could like Enzo as a love interest, and this book completely proved me wrong. So definitely check this out. It was so good, and like I said, one of my favorite captor-captive romances. And next up we have Tattered Stars, which is the first book in the Tattered and Torn series by Cowles. So this is a small town romance, and it was actually a lot darker than I was expecting. We are following Everly at the beginning of the story. She's very young. She is living with her family in this isolated compound. They are living completely off the grid, and Everly's father has some mental issues. He ends up stealing this young girl and bringing her back to the compound. So Everly, at just 11 years old, goes to the town on horseback and says, "My father has stolen this girl. She's afraid she's gonna die. Please go save her." So because of doing this, Everly's family ends up cutting her off, completely isolating her, and Everly goes to live with her sister. So years go by. I believe Everly's mother dies and leaves her the house. that she grew up in. So Everly moves back to her hometown. So when she gets there, her family, once again, completely hates her. So they start threatening her. And she also meets the chief of police, or the sheriff. And he happens to be the brother of the girl that was kidnapped. So it is their relationship, and it was really good. I'm not typically a fan of small town romances, but I really love this one. It had a decent amount of emotion, but also there were like some scarier elements of it because you are dealing with these people that have been living off the grid and are very hostile towards our main character. And I cannot wait to continue with this series. All right, and last up, I know a lot of you are not going to agree with this pick, and that's okay. I really enjoyed it. That is Does It Hurt by H.D. Carlton. I know. A lot of people also really hated this book. Personally, I thought it was super unique. I liked the shark scene, and I really like H.D. Carlton's writing. So I really did end up enjoying this. This is following Enzo and Sawyer. Sawyer is this girl that has been living her life by stealing the identities of men she sleeps with, and that's pretty much how she gets by. So one day, she steals the identity of Enzo. He's this guy that works with sharks, and Enzo finds out about it. So he confronts Sawyer on a boat. The boat ends up capsizing on this deserted island, and then they find out the island actually isn't deserted. There's this crazy man living in a lighthouse that forces rules upon them, saying that there won't be another boat on the island for a few months. So they all have to live together. He says they're not allowed to leave their rooms after, I think, like 10 o'clock at night, and strange things start happening. And it's their relationship, and it was fun. It was just fun. It was a good read. I think it actually has over 4.0 on Goodreads, which is pretty high. But I really enjoyed this. I think it is definitely worth checking out. All right, guys, those are my top romances for 2022. Please let me know down in the comments, what book do you think should have been nominated? Also, there should be a bunch of these videos posting on the same day, so make sure to check out everyone else's videos of what books they think should have been nominated in the Goodreads Choice Awards. And I said this already, I post new videos every Thursday and Sunday, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye.